So this is Tim O'Dar chatting with the producers of My Adventures with Superman. How you guys doing?
Great.
Good.
Amazing. Fitting question I think you guys appreciate. I have to start off with. In your trio, is there among you a Steve Lombard? And if so, who is it?
I like Brendan instantly pointed to Jake.
He's more Jimmy, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
Steve too, because Jimmy and Steve are
On the Steve to Jimmy spectrum, I'm somewhere in the middle, unfortunately.
When we did the pilot, like we also voiced Lois, Clark, and Jimmy. So I was Lois, Jake was Jimmy, and Brendan was Clark, and that kind of also fits our personalities a little
It's
too.
fairly true. Yeah. Yeah. And weirdly, if we're putting us all on the Steve spectrum, it goes me, Josie, Brendan.
100%.
One of Josie's nicknames on the production was Brosephine Campbell.
Yeah.
Just look, Wolf Cub, love the hustle of the Lombard.
She's got it.
Got it.
Bishop Hugh is the Steve. Brutal, but true.
So moving on, superhero fatigue is definitely a phrase that's been tossed around lately due to a lot of misfires in the past year. That's not to say there haven't been some successes. I'm happily say My Adventures with Superman definitely one of the bright spots the past year. Just looking online and social media, clearly resonated with a lot of people. I would love to hear your thoughts, how you guys were able to, I guess, avoid the trap of superhero fatigue and why you think it's, resonated with so many people.
This is such a loaded question. Jameer, why are you doing this to us? Okay. Josie, you go first.
I think for us, we are superhero fans, and I do think that every now and then, like comics are dead or superheroes are dead, or there's too many of them, is often like theater is dead. It's like, it's still around. People are still enjoying it. So I think for us, at least making the show, we were like, well, what things brought us joy? When we read these comics as kids, when we first saw like the Donner movie, when we first saw the things that influenced us, what did we take away? What brought us personally joy? And then we're like, great, that's what we're going to put on the screen. We're going to take the stuff, the joy out of our souls, and put it on the screen and hope that that resonates with people. And it turns out it did. That a lot of the things that brought us delight brings other people delight, and that Superman is a character full of joy and hope, and that's what everybody wants.
Yeah.
That was a really good answer. I have a worse answer, and it's pretty trite. Okay, so I think thinking about superheroes as a genre of entertainment is the mistake.
Yeah.
Like superheroes are a prompt, right? And the reason that most of these characters have endured, especially the ones that have like risen to the top of the cultural consciousness, is that they're very strong characters, right? So if you're like, this is a superhero thing, so it has to have these beats and it has to work this way, everyone will hate that. Or they'll just be bored and not know why. But if you're like, okay, what makes Clark Kent, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen, like what makes them great characters to watch? What chemistry is there between them? What can we do with them that hasn't been done yet? Like, I think that is what makes these concepts work. Like you go back to the Fleischer shorts, or you go back to the original like early Action Comics, and what works is Lois Lane like pushing Clark Kent out of the way to get as close as she can to the fire or the robots or the murder or the whatever, and then Clark being like, oh shit, and then like changing clothes and swooping in after her. That's the heart of it. So if you're like, what makes these characters great, I think you're gonna have a superhero hit on your hands.
Yeah.
If you're like, what do people like about superheroes, the genre? Because they're not a genre, it's a prompt. Superman is a sci-fi show. It is about an alien who falls to Earth from a galactic empire, and has to like make his way. It's a science fiction concept. Batman is a detective story. Like, if you are staying true to the characters of world's nicest alien, world's greatest detective, world's best reporter, the superest best friend to ever live, then I think you're gonna win. Sorry, that was like way ranty and a little pretentious, but that's
it's true though. We focus on like what makes these characters stand out as their own individual like tentpoles in the culture. Like, they are heroes first. Superhero is just something we call that when they have powers and stuff.
And it lets you get super big on the action. Like, superhero implies there's no cap to how big the action can get. People love that. but you have to get the characters right, or no one cares about the action.
Exactly. Character first.
So true. So as teased at the end of the last season, fans can look forward to Brainiac appearing voiced by Mike Ramerson. It's funny, last year, during our interview, we kind of discussed about technology as a big theme of the series. And Jake, I believe, you specifically brought up AI with Brainiac. His character literally embodies the dangers of artificial intelligence. He seems now more relevant than ever. Would love to know, did the current conversations of AI the last few years figure into this version of Brainiac, or what could you tease about this version you're creating for Brainiac?
Wildly and unbelievably, we finished writing this version of Brainiac and recording him right before all that kicked off, right? So we're lucky that we inherited a character who's like famous for being the destruction of a civilization that created him. What we lucked into that. So I can look at this, like I can run through my mind what we wrote and be like, oh, it's very relevant. But we did not do that on purpose, because the technology that you're talking about, the generative stuff, didn't really hit until we were in post-production on the show, which is crazy. I didn't even like notice that happen.
I think the problem of AI is really just the old problem of machine technology making the human element obsolete, right? And I think that's, since the Industrial Revolution, that's been something that's been on the consciousness of mankind, so to speak. So I think that, sorry, Josie.
Oh no, go for it. I was going to say, just going off of Brendan, I do think there is a theme, and it's not necessarily just AI, but like a theme altogether with Brainiac of just like, the machine wants things to slot in perfectly, and humans are imperfect. And so that is going to be a constant frustration when you want everything to just be a cog, and people aren't cogs. I'll also say, I think we also talked a lot about empires, like the rise and fall of empires, and like that idea of like empire means we are better than you, we know the way, was a big discussion in like developing our Brainiac in their season 2 of like, what does an empire mean and what does it mean to the people in it?
Exactly.
And to Josie's point, a huge, and this was part of season 1 too, like a big Superman thing for us is that Superman is a shield for the weak, right? He protects those who cannot protect themselves. Like that's his deal in our show. He is a rescue worker, not a cop. And so a big part of that ethos is the understanding that it is people and their happiness and safety that are important, and that is your first principle. And almost every Superman villain starts from a different place, right? Which is Ivo's point of view of like, how can I enrich myself, right? Or Waller's point of view that like, well, the collective safety is important, but you got to break a few eggs to protect your planet from aliens or whatever, right? And so Clark's like, everyone's safety is the first thing, everyone's happiness and thriving is the first thing. And I think the interesting way that intersects with the current AI conversation is that this is like a product and service for search of a use. It's like, we're going to make this happen and we're going to profit off of it, and we don't care what it does to the culture, and we don't care what it does to people. It's not a tool to serve humanity. We would like humanity to serve our tool.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the Brainiac ethos.
Yes.
So I think many feel, or could be argued, that perhaps the greatest rogue gallery in comics belongs to Batman. Superman, he's got some good ones, maybe not as robust. So I think even though like the Bruce Timm Superman series, they kind of, obviously you have to create some new ones. They're somewhat limited, but the series, you go outside the usual. You have Heatwave, Deathstroke. I'm curious, but I love in this new season, you bring in Atomic Skull, which I know him, but I never knew his name. Like, oh yeah. I don't think anyone knows is like what his deal is. So I'd love to see. I love that you're kind of reinventing Superman's villains and kind of new spins on them. Love to know how you kind of what other new villains we can expect, and how you kind of approached building up Superman's rogues gallery.
Yeah, I feel Superman's rogues gallery. Batman is good because of the villains, and I think Superman is good because of the characters, Clark, Lois, and Jimmy. So that makes it fun for us and exciting because we get to pull from other, like you said, other parts of the DC mythos for the villains, but also we get to make a new spin on the classic ones, because really, like, Superman's main villain is like, like it's basically Lex Luthor, and then like anything from space like Zod or Brainiac and stuff like that. And then around those like main three, you sort of mix and match or look deep into, you know, like Legion or something cool. So for us, we got to sort of craft our villains around the narrative of our three heroes, and that's why this season you see like Lex Luthor, you see Amanda Waller sort of coming up with like Atomic Skull on her team, right? Because we sort of center everything around, you know, like who's a good foil for Lois or whoever we need the story to be about.
And I think Brendan said something that like is really worthwhile for Superman, which is like, you know, Batman is a dark character who is defined by his enemies. Superman is a hopeful character who's defined by his allies.
Exactly.
Like, yeah, like, you know, people might know Atomic Skull, but they know the Daily Planet, they know Perry, they know Jimmy, they know Lois. They even know some of the like side characters. They know all of his like world. And
Steve.
that is Steve. They know Steve Lombard. And that is, you know, indicative of who Superman is and the character he is. He is somebody who embraces everyone and has a world exactly as rich and as fulfilling as any other hero. It's just defined by brightness, not necessarily the worst of humanity.
And then I think the other fun thing about Superman villains is there's this old fallacy that Superman's hard to write because he's too powerful or whatever. The best things for Superman to struggle against are things that cannot be punched, right?
Yeah.
So we love to stack the deck with people who can hurt him, right? Like Damage and Atomic Skull. Like they can punch him, and because we want to see that. But like Lex Luthor is going to do things this season that you cannot fight with your fists.
Yeah.
You can't. And then the other fun thing about Superman and his villains is that he's so much less willing to use force than they are. Like Clark is so careful with the world and everyone in it, and they are reckless. And I'm excited to see that play out.
Yeah, he wants to help.
Yeah.
Finally, I know there's a lot of hype for James Gunn's upcoming Superman film. You know, given his track record, I have complete faith on him. But I think definitely it seems right now we're on the precipice of a potential new Superman renaissance that I feel kind of began or with this series. I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on potentially kind of heralding a new era of Superman with this animated series.
Well, that would be neat.
Yeah. Look, I'd love for Superman to be, you know, Superman started as, you know, America and the world's most popular superhero. And I'd love for him to reclaim that title, make it the summer of Superman, make it the season to like maybe years of Superman, like
Century of Superman.
Century of Superman. There we go. There's the alliteration. Like, yeah, I'm excited. I hope people embrace it.
So a thing we talked about last season when we were doing press is that every version of Superman is like fun and interesting and cool. Like I have in my office like All-Star Superman, which is the really hopeful comic book. I have Red Sun, which is like about as dark as anybody's ever gotten with him, because I do think that is a fascinating take and I like a lot about that. So he rules. He's endured for you know, almost 90 years because he rules. His friends rule. And so I'm here for all of that everybody's going to dish out. I watched that Donner movie pretty much every day until I was 6 years old, and then I became a weekly thing. So yeah, like I can't get enough of it. And to your point, I think James Gunn is going to do a really interesting job with it. Like it's such a fun matchup of like creator who's only done Angry Misfits and America's Nicest Boy. And like you said, James's track record is such that I'm so stoked to see what he does. And I work at the company, have no idea what it is. It will not tell me what it is. I know no more than you do. And I'm dying.
Awesome. On that note, I can't wait for the new season of My Adventures with Superman and see what's coming up with Clark and his friends.
Hell yeah. Thanks, Tamer.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.